The moment Harvey Knox said, "Maybe you should try again until you get it right," I felt something inside me fracture, a sharp, quiet crack I hadn't noticed before. I'm Ophelia Grant, 31 years old, and a pediatric nurse with 8 years of steady, exhausting experience. Most days, I'm the invisible thread stitching my family together, the one who pays the bills no one thanks me for, the one who keeps the peace when the air thickens with tension. Just last week, I transferred $2,200 to cover a surprise tax bill on the house, and not a single thank you graced my phone. Harvey's presence is suffocating, a constant weight pressing down on my chest, guilt-tripping Daniel and me about not having a grandson, claiming girls are worthless in our family line. I've mastered the art of smiling through it, convincing myself she's just old-fashioned, stuck in a world that belongs to another era. I am the silent backbone, the quiet strength everyone depends on, but no one really sees. Harvey demands attention and gratitude as if they're owed by birthright, but I am the one holding the household together. Every late-night shift, every tired morning, every sacrifice to keep this family functioning, none of it registers with her. She talks over me at family gatherings, dismisses my words like I'm invisible air, yet I hold tight to a secret power. The house deed is in my name. It's a fact I guard carefully, a quiet reassurance that maybe I'm not as powerless as I appear. But for now, I swallow my pride and keep the peace, still hoping respect can be earned rather than demanded. The brunch was supposed to be harmless, another typical Sunday drenched in forced smiles and awkward silences. But when Harvey cornered me, her voice low but cruel, "Maybe you should try again until you get it right," I felt the words embed themselves like splinters under my skin. I forced myself to smile, nodding politely while my heart clenched. The room buzzed with chatter, oblivious to the storm swirling inside me. I wanted to retreat, to scream, to cry, but I didn't. I'm used to carrying more than my share of pain without breaking. I told myself, she's just old-fashioned. She doesn't understand. This is family. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and for the first time, I wondered how long I could keep pretending. I am caught in the middle of a storm I didn't choose but am forced to weather daily. Harvey's expectations press like a vice, yet I am the one who keeps the family afloat. I watch Daniel shift uncomfortably beside me, torn between loyalty to his mother and his wife. The silence between us speaks volumes. He wants to protect me, but knows better than to confront Harvey head-on. As I glance down at my hands, rough from years of nursing, I realize this is no longer just about patience or love. It's about survival. And though I haven't yet dared to wield my secret strength, I can feel its quiet pulse beneath the surface, waiting. For now, I smile and keep walking the tightrope, hoping the next step won't break me. From the moment Lisa was born, the fracture lines in our family began to deepen, though I didn't fully understand it then. I was just 8 years old, clutching a deflated balloon at my own birthday party, while Harvey barely glanced my way. Instead, her eyes sparkled with adoration for baby Lisa, cooing, "Our true heir," as she held the tiny girl close. I remember standing in the corner, invisible, hearing Harvey whisper to my brother Daniel, "Ophelia could never compare." Those words, sharp and cold, etched themselves into my young heart. Over the years, that clear favoritism never faded. Lisa was the golden child, the one destined to carry on the Knox legacy, while I was sidelined, overlooked, and dismissed. Harvey's cold preference was a constant undercurrent through every family gathering, every holiday, every mundane weekday. I excelled in school, earned scholarships, and poured my heart into nursing, but her approval was never forthcoming. Instead, my achievements were minimized or ignored, my pain brushed aside as if it was weakness. I told myself it was tough love, that Harvey's harshness was some kind of test of strength I needed to pass. But one night after a family dinner, the words she spoke to me still echo, louder than any applause. "Girls don't belong in this legacy." The sting was so sharp I swallowed hard, forcing a smile that cracked inside. I covered the wound with loyalty, with the hope that family meant enduring even the deepest cuts in silence. Growing up, I learned to hide my hurt behind a mask of obedience and quiet service. I became the dependable one, the peacemaker who bore insults without complaint. I remember the way Harvey would dismiss my opinions in front of others, her eyes flashing with disdain, while Lisa basked in praise for simply existing. The house was a stage where I played the background role, and Lisa the star. I tried to reconcile the two worlds, the loving nurse I wanted to be, and the overlooked daughter-in-law I was made to feel like. I convinced myself that if I just worked harder, stayed silent longer, I might earn a sliver of respect. But the cold reality was that I was trapped in a family system that valued me only for my silence and submission. There were nights I lay awake, replaying every conversation, every look that made me feel unseen. I remember one Christmas dinner when Harvey openly praised Lisa for carrying the bloodline, while I sat quietly, my heart pounding in my chest. I told Daniel later, "I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this." He squeezed my hand and said, "We'll get through it. Together." His words were a lifeline, but they couldn't shield me from Harvey's relentless judgment. I learned to hide my resentment, to channel it into quiet determination. The legacy Harvey cherished wasn't mine, but the family's fragility depended on me, and that contradiction burned inside me with every passing year. For the past 5 years, I've been the family's quiet financial pillar, shouldering the mortgage payments on the house, $1,500 every month from my nursing salary. I canceled vacations, picked up extra shifts, and rearranged my schedule countless times to care for Daniel's ailing father. While I bore these sacrifices silently, family gatherings felt like walking through a minefield. Gifts and favors I offered often met with icy silence or veiled insults instead of gratitude. It was exhausting, a constant test of my patience and resolve. Daniel, my husband and closest ally, once asked me one evening, his voice barely above a whisper, "Ophelia, why do you keep giving when they barely see you?" I didn't have an answer ready. I only said, "I hope one day they'll understand." My mother, Margaret Grant, offers quiet support but steers clear of confrontation. She sees the strain on me and wishes she could do more, but she respects my choice to keep the peace. The house deed is in my name, a fact I've kept carefully private, my secret weapon, though I'm still unsure how or when to use it. Harvey looms over every family event, demanding a grandson to keep the bloodline pure, her voice dripping with entitlement and old-world tradition. Meanwhile, I absorb the blows, the dismissals, and the expectations, hoping that my sacrifices will one day be recognized. The family's fragile peace depends on me, but the cost is growing heavier with each passing day. I remember the night I rearranged my entire weekend to care for Daniel's father, canceling a rare day off to cover his medical appointments. When I told Harvey, her response was a cold, "You don't have to do everything." But when I didn't, chaos followed, and the family blamed me for not stepping up. It was as if my efforts were invisible or worse, expected without thanks. Sometimes I wondered if my value was measured only by what I gave, never by who I am, and yet, I kept going. I believed love meant sacrifice, even when it felt like bleeding in silence. The mortgage payments, the extra shifts, the sleepless nights, they were my quiet rebellion, my way of holding on to something solid in a house built on fragile egos. At Lisa's engagement party, I felt the sting of Harvey's cruelty as sharply as ever. In front of the gathered guests, family, friends, people I barely knew, Harvey's voice cut through the room like a knife. "Ophelia, with twin girls, you failed the family," she said, her tone dripping with disdain. The room fell into a suffocating silence. Some guests exchanged uncomfortable glances. Others chuckled awkwardly, as if unsure how to respond. Daniel's jaw tightened beside me, his eyes dark with frustration, but I felt my throat close up, my hands clenching tightly in my lap. I swallowed the sharp sting, whispering to myself, "She's stressed. It's just stress." I wanted to disappear, to vanish into the floor beneath me, but I stayed still and silent. Later, I excused myself quietly, slipping out the back door to find fresh air. The night sky was cool against my flushed face as I leaned against the brick wall, trying to steady my breath. It was the first time I refused to engage, the first time I turned down Harvey's invitation to discuss family plans in her usual demanding tone. The seed of doubt took root deep inside me, Was this really something I could fix? Or was I losing a battle I wasn't sure I wanted to fight anymore? Even as hope flickered, I felt a new, quiet strength growing, a backbone I hadn't fully recognized before. I wasn't ready to show it yet, but it was there, waiting. And for the first time, I wondered if maybe I didn't have to keep smiling through the pain. Harvey didn't miss my small act of defiance. In fact, she seemed to sharpen her claws in response. Days after I quietly refused to bow to her demands, whispers started sneaking through family gatherings like poison ivy. Lisa was the first to mention it, her voice sweet but measured as she told me, "People are saying you're being selfish, Ophelia. Too sensitive." The words hit me in the gut, but worse were the calls from relatives, cousins, aunts, who poked at my spirit under the guise of concern. "Maybe you should just try harder," one said. "It's for the family, after all." Their voices carried that familiar undertone of judgment, as if my emotions were the problem to be fixed rather than the wounds they ignored. I felt the walls closing in, isolation seeping slowly into the cracks of my resolve. Harvey's gaslighting was relentless. On the phone, her voice dripped with false calm. "You're imagining things, dear. You've always caused trouble. Maybe if you weren't so sensitive, things would be easier." I clenched the phone, hearing the venom beneath the sugar. The worst was at family brunch, where Lisa sidled up beside me, eyes lowered but voice sharp. "We're all trying to keep the peace, Ophelia. Maybe you should stop pushing so hard." The room felt suddenly colder, the chatter around us fading into a dull roar. Even Margaret remained silent, her usual quiet support replaced by an uneasy stillness that stung more than any words. Doubt gnawed at me. Was I truly the problem? Was my pain just overreaction? The exhausting dance of resistance and submission drained me, but I refused to disappear. Determined to salvage what remained of our fractured family, I called for a meeting, Harvey, Daniel, and I together. I rehearsed my words, steadying myself to speak calmly about respect, love, and the sacrifices I'd made quietly. When the day came, I laid my heart bare. "I love this family," I said, "but I need to be seen, not silenced." Harvey responded with crocodile tears, her voice trembling as she painted herself the martyr. "I've sacrificed everything. You're tearing us apart." Daniel shifted uneasily, torn between the two of us. Uncle Paul, acting as mediator, seemed to side subtly with Harvey, nodding along to dismiss my concerns as mere misunderstandings. I left that room heavier than when I entered, feeling the sharp sting of futility. Words alone wouldn't heal this rift, but somewhere inside, a flicker of hope still lingered, quiet but unextinguished. The next blow came when Daniel's promotion party became the stage for Harvey's next attack. Surrounded by colleagues and friends, she struck with precision born of years of practice, revealing that I'd only landed my nursing job through family connections. The room fell into an awkward hush, eyes darting between me and her as she produced personal texts I thought private. She twisted my words, painting me as ungrateful and scheming. My cheeks burned with humiliation, a cold sweat breaking out as I caught Daniel's conflicted gaze, his silence louder than any defense. I felt the weight of shattered confidence pressing down. My reputation, painstakingly built over years, crumbled in front of those I respected most. The harsh whispers and sidelong glances confirmed it was no accident. This was a calculated strike, and I was left to pick up the pieces amid the wreckage of my dignity. Despite the sting of that night, I reached out again, desperate for peace. I offered to host a family dinner, hoping to lay down boundaries and speak openly about my needs. For the first time, I voiced them clearly: respect for my daughters, acknowledgement of my sacrifices, a stop to the insults. Harvey listened with a sweet, cold smile that didn't reach her eyes. When I finished, she dismissed me with a warning. "You don't know what you're risking." The truth settled like ice in my chest. She had no intention of changing. The rejection was a line drawn in stone, sharp and unyielding. Later, I whispered to Daniel, "I did everything I could." The vulnerability I'd shown was met with icy cruelty, and the fragile hope I clung to fractured again in that bitter silence. The aftermath hit like a relentless tide, sweeping away any remnants of stability I clung to. Harvey's poison seeped through the family veins faster than I could react, Lisa's sweet words disguised sharp daggers, spreading rumors of my arrogance as if my only crime was standing tall amid her storms. Even Margaret, my mother, who had been a quiet refuge, began to withdraw, her eyes filled with sorrow, but her voice silent, as if fearing that any defense of me might ignite further chaos. Alone, that word echoed in my mind, heavy and hollow. Daniel tried to anchor me, his presence a flicker of warmth amid the cold hostility, but even he seemed frayed by the pressure, torn between love for me and loyalty to his mother. I sat in the dim light of our living room one evening, the house quiet except for the hum of the city outside. My hands trembled as I scrolled through messages from relatives, veiled sympathies that wrapped subtle accusations. Maybe I am the problem, the bitter thought whispered through my despair. The weight of their judgment crushed me, the exhaustion seeping into my bones. My heart ached, not just from betrayal, but from the suffocating isolation that wrapped around me like a thick fog. Yet, beneath the surface of that despair, something stubborn stirred, a quiet storm gathering strength in the shadows. I felt myself standing on the edge of something vast, the terrible clarity of knowing I could no longer endure this without breaking. Each night, I wrestled with the gnawing self-doubt that threatened to swallow all the years I had given, to nursing, to Daniel, to keeping our family's fragile balance. I replayed every conversation, every slight, searching for where I had failed. Was I too proud? Too sensitive? The questions cut deep, and yet, in the marrow of my soul, a small ember flickered, refusing to be extinguished. I remembered the contracts, the deeds quietly held in my name, the mortgage payments I alone had managed. Those facts were more than just paper. They were lifelines and potential weapons. The knowledge gave me a strange comfort, a silent promise that the battle wasn't over, even if I felt utterly alone. I closed my eyes, breathing deeply, steeling myself. Whatever came next, I knew I had to find the strength within or be lost entirely. The world had turned its back, but somewhere deep inside, a new resolve was taking root. I was tired of hiding, tired of being invisible in my own family's story. The fractures had become chasms, and I could no longer pretend to be the glue holding it all together at my own expense. As the night deepened, I whispered into the darkness, "This isn't the end." I didn't know how I would fight or what shape the battle would take, but for the first time in months, I felt a flicker of purpose piercing through the despair. The quiet storm was awakening, and with it, the realization that survival demanded more than silence. It demanded courage. The air in the room was thick with tension, every eye fixed on Harvey as she delivered her verdict like a surgeon's knife. "Ophelia, you're disinherited," she said, her voice cold, slicing through the murmurs of disbelief around us. The room froze, the weight of her words crashing down hard against my chest. Property I had legally owned, the home I had poured my soul into protecting, was ripped from me in a breath. Daniel's face betrayed shock and helplessness, his eyes wide as Harvey produced what she claimed were documents, falsified papers, forged signatures transferring the land to Lisa years ago. My heart shattered in that moment, the betrayal no longer just emotional, but brutally tangible. I stood rooted to the spot, the world narrowing to a sharp point of pain and disbelief. I wanted to scream, to demand proof, to tear those lies apart, but my voice caught in my throat. The faces around me blurred, a sea of judgment and cold calculation, as Harvey smiled with the satisfaction of a predator who had finally cornered her prey. The realization hit me like ice water. This wasn't mere family squabbling or misguided cruelty. This was war. The veil was lifted, and I saw Harvey not as a flawed mother-in-law, but as a ruthless adversary willing to destroy me to claim what she wanted. My hope, fragile and exhausted, died then, replaced by a chilling clarity that numbed the edges of my grief. The fight wasn't about acceptance anymore. It was about justice, about reclaiming what was mine, no matter the cost. The betrayal stung deeper than any insult, cutting beneath the skin and laying bare the cold reality of who Harvey truly was. I felt a strange detachment, as though watching from outside my body. The room buzzed with murmurs and shifting alliances, but inside, a sharp clarity crystallized. The softness I had clung to, The hope that family could still mean love was gone. All that remained was the stark battlefield of wills and wills alone. I gritted my teeth, swallowing back tears, my mind racing through every memory, every slight, every hidden barb that had led to this moment. Harvey's smile was a mask, but the cruelty behind it was real and dangerous. I wasn't the woman she thought she could break, not anymore. Later, when the house was empty and the echoes of that meeting had faded, I sat alone in the stillness, the weight of loss settling like a stone in my chest. The pain was fierce, but beneath it, something harder and fiercer bloomed. Anger. Raw, fierce anger that burned away the exhaustion and despair. I thought about all the years I had given, the sacrifices swallowed whole, the silences endured. This wasn't some random act of cruelty. It was a calculated power play designed to erase me. This has always been the way, I admitted bitterly to the empty room, but that truth no longer chained me. Instead, it steeled me. I would not be the victim in this story. Not again. I paced the room, fingers clenching and unclenching, the grief transforming into resolve. I thought about the mortgage payments I had made alone, the contract sealed in my name, legal documents resting in a safe place Harvey didn't know about. Those were my weapons, shields forged from years of quiet strength. The grief settled into a cold determination, a promise to myself that I would never again allow myself to be powerless or invisible. The cost had been too high, and the betrayal too deep. I swallowed hard, the taste of bitter resolve in my mouth. I wasn't just grieving what I'd lost. I was awakening to what I needed to become. Someone who fought back, who reclaimed her dignity and her rightful place. The anger was fierce, but the clarity was sharper. The night stretched long and quiet, and as I sat down with Daniel, my voice was steady despite the storm inside. "We need a plan," I said, meeting his eyes. "This is bigger than family squabbles now." He nodded slowly, the weight of the truth settling over him at last. For the first time, I saw not just sorrow, but understanding in his gaze, a commitment to stand beside me, no matter the cost. We began to lay out a strategy, sifting through papers, contracts, and legal protections that Harvey had overlooked in her arrogance. The house, the mortgage, the sealed deeds, all quietly in my name, a fortress she never imagined I could claim. Daniel's concern was palpable, the lines around his eyes deepening as he voiced his fears about confronting Harvey. But his support was unwavering, a steady hand amid the chaos. "We'll do this together," he promised, and I believed him. Our conversation was sharp with purpose, each word a step away from chaos toward control. For the first time since everything began to unravel, the emotional storm was replaced by a strategic calm. The target was clear, Harvey Knox, and the tools were in our hands. I felt the weight of this new role settle around me, heavy but necessary. The fight was just beginning, but I was no longer lost in the pain. I was ready. I sat at the kitchen table, the scattered papers before me feeling heavier than their weight. The glow of my laptop illuminated faded bank statements, mortgage documents, and emails threading back years. Each line I read, every contract and transaction, revealed a tangled web of dependencies that Harvey had spun around herself. She'd leaned on the home's equity like a crutch to hide her mounting debts, expecting the family to cover bills she refused to touch. It was infuriating, and painfully clear that I had been carrying this burden alone for too long. I traced my fingerprints over mortgage statements in my name, the payments I'd made silently, without anyone knowing. The contracts signed years ago were my shield. Legal documents granting me sole rights to the property, documents Harvey had ignored and trampled over like they meant nothing. I reached for the phone and called our lawyer, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "I need to review everything we have on file. Bank statements, ownership papers, emails, every thread of proof that I'm the rightful owner." The lawyer's calm professionalism steadied me, and I began collecting every scrap of evidence. Each email where Harvey demanded money she never repaid, every signature forged or ignored, every manipulation masked as care or family duty, all was meticulously documented. I found myself rereading messages where she guilted me for not being a team player, even as she siphoned resources from my own pockets. The realization hit like a punch. They needed me more than I needed them. The power I'd thought lost was quietly mine again, locked behind layers of truth and legal weight. The leverage I never asked for had been in my hands all along. But it wasn't just numbers and contracts. I documented the emotional manipulation too. The calculated guilt trips, the silent punishments, the way Harvey weaponized victimhood to silence me. Old texts where she twisted my words, phone calls where she feigned concern while eroding my confidence. The mental ledger of abuse stacked alongside the financial one. My hands shook as I typed up a detailed record, a testament not only to her greed, but to the years I had endured in silence. I could almost hear her voice, sharp, sweet, venomous, echoing behind each entry. This was no longer about family drama. This was about reclaiming everything she'd stolen, every shred of my dignity and security. The truth gave me a strange strength, a new clarity that settled deep into my bones. The battlefield was set, and for the first time, I wasn't the one cornered. As night crept across the sky, I closed the laptop, heart pounding but mind clear. I whispered to the empty room, "They need me more than I need them." The quiet air held those words like a promise. I was no longer invisible. I was no longer powerless. The storm was coming. But until then, I had to be patient, careful, and precise. The map of vulnerabilities was drawn, the evidence collected. Now came the hardest part. Turning truth into action without losing my calm, without letting fear or anger betray me. This was my fight, and I would take it on with every ounce of strength I had left. The following days passed in a strange quiet. I moved like a ghost within my own home, methodically changing passwords on shared accounts, updating legal documents, and quietly notifying our lawyer that formal actions would soon begin. Each subtle shift felt like pulling threads loose from a tapestry woven over decades. I kept my face neutral, my words measured, as if nothing had changed. At family dinners and gatherings, I smiled and nodded, absorbing the usual jabs and guilt trips without flinching. Daniel watched me with quiet pride from across the room, his steady presence a balm amid the tension. I caught his eye once, and in that brief moment, I saw the unspoken promise of support we shared. No one suspected the storm gathering beneath my calm exterior. Maintaining this facade was exhausting. At times, the urge to snap, to scream, to reveal everything burned inside me like wildfire. But I swallowed it down, knowing that showing weakness now would only feed their power. Harvey continued her subtle digs, her thinly veiled comments like ice shards, but I let them slide like water off stone. I was gathering strength, patience, and ammunition, all while they remained blind to the shift in control. The house, once a battlefield, now felt like a chessboard, each piece moving silently in a game they didn't realize had changed. The calm before the storm, and I was ready to strike when the time came. One evening, while sifting through old bank records, I stumbled upon something chilling. A series of transactions, hidden beneath layers of accounts and dated back over 7 years, caught my eye. The numbers didn't add up. As I traced each entry, the horrifying truth emerged. Harvey had siphoned over $150,000 from my personal inheritance, channeling funds into accounts under her control. My breath caught in my throat, the room spinning slightly. These were not small amounts. They were deliberate, repeated thefts. Forged signatures hovered in the margins like ghostly fingerprints, documents altered with ruthless precision. The betrayal was staggering. She'd been stealing from me all this time while painting herself as the victim at every family gathering, every whispered conversation. My phone buzzed. A message from Laura, a distant cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. She'd reached out recently, suspicious about Harvey's dealings, and now she sent me a folder of documents, evidence that corroborated my findings. Bank statements, emails, even a secretly recorded conversation where Harvey admitted to diverting funds. The pieces clicked together like a dam breaking inside me. I felt cold fury and a deep, aching sadness swirling in a tempest of betrayal. How could someone so close, so trusted, wield deceit so shamelessly? This was no longer just about property or pride. It was a reckoning. The legal checkmate I'd been planning shifted instantly, now encompassing decades of theft, lies, and manipulation. I closed my eyes, fighting the sting of tears. This battle had just escalated beyond anything I'd imagined. The weight of that discovery settled over me like ice, sharpening my focus. I remembered every insult, every belittling word she had cast my way, every moment she portrayed herself as the martyr while robbing me blind. The facade shattered in my mind, replaced by a fierce, unyielding resolve. I whispered to the empty room, "You stole from me, Harvey. Now it's time you paid." Daniel's voice came softly from the doorway. "We'll get through this. Together." His steady faith became my anchor, a reminder that I was not alone. The path ahead was grim, but this truth, this proof, was my weapon. The silent storm was no longer patient. It was time to move. I began with careful precision. First, I withdrew all financial support that had quietly sustained Harvey's facade. Shared credit cards were canceled. Mortgages payments I'd made to cover her debts stopped. Every channel she'd relied on was quietly severed. I sent formal legal notices demanding explanations, copies marked with the evidence I'd painstakingly collected. The air shifted in the house like a current, sudden and electric. Family members noticed the unpaid bills, the canceled services, the abrupt change in tone. Whispers became uneasy glances, and Harvey's carefully constructed facade began to crack under the weight of real consequences. She confronted me once, her voice tight, eyes flashing with a desperate fury I hadn't seen before. "What are you playing at, Ophelia?" she hissed. I met her gaze steadily, feeling the cold iron of determination settle in my chest. "I'm done paying for your lies." Daniel stood nearby, silent but resolute, his presence a shield I'd never had before. The subtle pressure I applied was like ice melting into fire, slow, deliberate, and undeniable. Harvey's control was slipping, and for the first time, the family saw the cracks beneath her mask. I remained composed, refusing to be baited into outbursts. The game had begun, and the first moves were mine. This was only the beginning, but the tide was turning. The quiet strength I'd nurtured was now an unstoppable force. The day of the family meeting arrived like a storm breaking, tense and heavy with expectation. The lawyer sat at the head of the room, his presence formal and immovable, while a few chosen witnesses filled the chairs around us. Harvey arrived late, her eyes scanning the room with thinly veiled contempt, as if daring me to speak first. But I held my ground, calm and unwavering. The evidence I had gathered lay before me in neat stacks. Contracts sealed years ago in my name, bank statements tracing every unauthorized withdrawal, and legal notices demanding restitution. I unfolded each piece like turning pages in a book written to expose her lies. When I laid the first contract on the table, the room shifted. Harvey's confident facade faltered, the sharpness in her gaze dulling. "This," I said, voice steady but firm, "is proof that I am the sole owner of this home. The mortgage payments I have made alone, the debts you hid, everything is documented. The family legacy you claim to protect is built on lies and theft." I looked directly at Harvey, seeing the flicker of panic behind her practiced mask. "From this day forward, the boundaries are clear. Respect my daughters, respect me, or face legal consequences." Silence swallowed the room. Allies whispered quietly. Others stared, stunned by the weight of truth finally laid bare. Harvey's lips twitched as if to speak, but no words came. The power she had wielded so effortlessly evaporated, leaving only the hollow echo of defeat. I felt the air thicken, every breath charged with tension and release. My heart hammered, yet my face remained composed. This was my victory, hard-earned and undeniable. The shifting glances around the room told me everything. The balance had shifted irreversibly. I was no longer the silent, invisible daughter-in-law. I was the woman holding the reins. The legacy Harvey so desperately clung to was cracking, and I was the one holding the hammer. As we left the meeting, the atmosphere was palpably altered. Harvey's world, once so carefully constructed, began to unravel at an alarming pace. Creditors who had been patient suddenly grew insistent. Whispers of unpaid debts and mismanaged funds rippled through family gatherings. Calls from distant relatives, once hesitant, now sought answers from Daniel and me. Harvey's phone rang endlessly, but I never heard her voice on those calls. She tried to reach out to me directly, sending bouquets of flowers and carefully worded apologies, each message dripping with false remorse. I read them once and deleted them without a word. My resolve was steel. I would not be ensnared by her empty gestures. The house felt quieter, but the silence was heavy with fractures. Family members who had once sided unquestioningly with Harvey now edged closer, their doubts growing like shadows at dusk. Some reached out, their voices hesitant but honest, asking for the truth they hadn't dared to face before. Daniel and I answered carefully, protecting our daughters and our peace above all. The web of control Harvey had spun became tangled and fragile, exposing the vulnerability beneath her imposing presence. The matriarch was no longer untouchable. She was isolated, her influence slipping through her fingers like sand. Watching this collapse was both painful and strangely freeing. Justice was cleaving through the lies, and I was standing firmly in its path. Harvey's response grew desperate and erratic. She began publicly portraying herself as the victim, weaving a narrative of betrayal and cruelty that drew sympathy from some corners. Threats of countersuits arrived with venomous force, each legal letter an attempt to intimidate. Friends and family once loyal to her turned into flying monkeys, pressing me with questions and accusations masked as concern. But I was prepared. Every threat was met with calm and a folder of documented facts, evidence so thorough it silenced even the most vocal skeptics. I refused to engage in emotional drama, focusing instead on the clarity of truth and the shield of law. Some relatives, seeing the undeniable truth, approached me quietly, offering apologies for their earlier silence and complicity. Their words were tentative, weighed down with guilt and regret, but I held my boundaries firm. Forgiveness was not mine to give lightly. The wounds were deep, and trust needed time to heal. Harvey's confidence dwindled as her isolation deepened. Her desperate attempts to regain control only revealed her weakening grip on the family and the narrative. The once mighty matriarch was retreating, her threats faltering into silence. She was cornered, defeated by facts and the quiet strength she had so long sought to crush. In that moment, I realized the battle was won, not with rage, but with measured resolve and unshakable proof. 6 months later, life settled into a new rhythm, quieter and more peaceful than I dared hope. The house, once a battleground, felt like home again, secure, warm, and filled with the laughter of our twin daughters. Daniel and I moved through our days with a calm that had been absent for far too long. The boundaries we established were respected. Harvey remained estranged, her presence reduced to necessary interactions defined by civility and distance. The burden of her control lifted, leaving space for healing and autonomy. I found new strength not in confrontation, but in the freedom to live on my terms, surrounded by those who truly mattered. Reflecting on the journey, bitterness no longer lingers in my heart. The scars remain, deep and raw, but so does a quiet pride in the woman I have become. I am no longer the silent provider, swallowed by others' needs and manipulations. I am a mother, a wife, a woman who reclaimed her voice, her dignity, and her power. The future stretches ahead, uncharted but promising, shaped by love and the hard-won peace that rises from standing firm in truth. Every morning I wake with gratitude for this second chance, not at revenge, but at life lived with courage and clarity. The fight changed me, but it did not break me. I am whole again, finally free,